come to the end of the retreat, but not the end of the practice. Retreats are useful things. We set aside some time for our practice, put aside other duties, responsibilities, try and set up our time for devoting maximum effort, maximum attention to the practice. So we tend to keep 8 precepts on the retreat to simplify our lives during that period, even if it's only a few days. We keep the 8 precepts, so we cut out eating in the evening, entertainments. We sleep simply so that we are practicing wakefulness and just sleep enough to get a rest and then put more effort into our meditation. So we improve our personal discipline and commitment to the practice, and then spend more time sitting, walking meditation to intensify our practice of mindfulness. However your practice went this retreat compared with other retreats, what you probably find is that cumulatively you get experience from each retreat, each time of practice you participate in. And little by little you gain more insight and understanding of the practice. Maybe you learn how to let go of things that previously were hard to let go of. Now you know how to let go of. So say like concerns about itches and minor aches and pains, small worries, irritations. There may be bigger things that you find more difficult to let go of. But if you have small successes, then they can give you inspiration to keep practicing. And if you can let go of one small thing, then that's teaching you that maybe in the future you'll be able to let go of something bigger. Much of our practice is about developing wholesome qualities of mind over and over again. And they become stronger. So we say like drops of water filling a jar. Each drop of water seems small and insignificant, but because the jar is a limited space, eventually you keep putting drops of water in a jar, it will be full. You keep putting effort into keeping precepts, bringing up mindfulness, contemplating the Dhamma, letting go of different kinds of craving and attachment. Little by little, your mind becomes fuller. And those small moments of mindfulness join together. And those small moments of insight and understanding deepen and grow. So that you reach a point where maybe one day you can see something clearly as a cause of suffering in your mind. You know, this is something just to put down, accept it, let it go, put it down. And you don't bother picking it up again because you know it's suffering or the cause of suffering. So a lot of our practice comes through gradually filling the mind up with sila and mindfulness and wisdom. It's one way we talk about the mind that is calm and still and peaceful. It has a sense of fullness. And when the mind is overcome by craving, it's the opposite. It feels like it's empty or lacking. We feel like we need something else to be happy. And you'll see this when you're meditating. You're sitting there or walking meditation, and there'll be a sense, I need to do something or get something that I haven't got, or go somewhere and do something that I'm not doing now. But as you become more mindful, you're letting go of those kind of desires, so then you're more at ease and feel peaceful in the present moment. And your mind kind of fills up with mindfulness, and then you start to feel contentment, at ease, even if you have some painful physical experiences or some bad memories arise. And this sense of ease and fullness supports your mind, and you can contemplate them and let them go. So if your mind feels really full and content, it won't want anything else at that moment. And that's what samadhi is. Your mind is content right there, right then. It's not looking at anywhere else for anything. Then if a desire arises, it seems less important. So if you're mindful and your mind is still and ease, say you have a thought about food, I want to eat a certain kind of food or have a drink or something. That desire doesn't bother you because you're already still, and your mind can see that desire as just a desire. It's not something you necessarily have to follow. You may decide if it's time to eat or drink, it may be that you follow the desire, but you have no compelling reason to follow it. It's choice, because you're mindful when you reflect whether you need to eat or need to drink or not. This is something, as you practice in a retreat, you might experience more. The ability to see a desire as a desire. Could be a form of aversion, so you may have a pain in your leg or your back, and you normally might be tempted to move, but because your mind is full, ease, mindfulness is there, you can choose whether to move or not. You're not just reacting to experience anymore because of pleasure and pain, grasping at pleasure, rejecting pain. You know the experience, and your mind is able to look and consider wisely, what should I do now? Should I just carry on sitting, or should I move? When strong desire comes up, it brings with it all kinds of confusion, doesn't it? So say you're sitting there with pain in your knees. The desire will come up and your mind will say, oh, I better move, otherwise my knees will explode, or I'll be crippled for life, and builds a big drama out of it. But if you're mindful, you just know this feeling, there's a painful feeling, comes and goes. And you may still decide it is a strong, painful feeling, you'd need to move, but you may not. You may decide, I can just watch this. You're no longer creating a drama out of it. Or maybe you have a memory of something that stressed you out from last week, last year. And that memory normally would bring up a lot of emotion with it, make you feel unhappy, angry, upset. Because your mindfulness is improved and you're feeling more full and ease, you're not seeking anything else at that moment because you're on retreat, you're practicing very well. Maybe you just see that memory as just a memory. You don't have to do anything with it other than know this is just a memory, and then you let it go. So you may say a retreat is an artificial kind of situation. You've set aside other activities, you're in a quiet place, You might say, well, it's not normal. I can only do it when I'm on retreat. I can only practice on retreat. Other times I can't. But that doesn't mean to say the retreat isn't worthwhile. It just means you understand that it is slightly artificial. You've created the best conditions you can for the retreat. You make use of that. And yes, it is harder when you go back to work or other activities, mixing with people, and you don't have so much time to meditate. Maybe you can't keep the 8 precepts normally, you accept that. But it doesn't mean to say that the insight, the understanding, the peace that you gained on the retreat all disappears and has no further use. There may be all kinds of insights that stay with you after the retreat. At the very least, you have some good memories, maybe memories of the effort you put into your practice, maybe some experience of peace, letting go that you had. You can remember that way after the retreat. And that can spur you on to practice again later. But be wary of the mind that says, my retreat was good, now I'm going to meditate every day, every morning, every evening, I'm going to be diligent and meditate. Be careful, because you might disappoint yourself, and after a week or two you're giving it up. If you can keep up a regular practice, that's the best of all, of course. But many people have made resolutions after retreats and they haven't been able to carry them through. So be a little bit cautious. At the very least, you've had time to get to know yourself better. When we're meditating, we're sitting, we're walking, we're seeing our mind, what it particularly attaches to, identifies with. We get used to knowing where our particular kinds of suffering are. And they may be different from someone else. We can't always compare with other people. Each person has their own body, their own mind, their own karma. But you're getting used to knowing yourself, and you can use that knowledge to your advantage. You get to know your habits, where your strengths are, because we've all got strengths, otherwise we wouldn't be here practicing. You get to know your strengths and you can build on them, develop them further. But then you also know your weaknesses, and maybe you get to know where you need to improve your effort. Perhaps you've seen you have particular kinds of distraction that you go for when you're meditating that always come up and seem to pull your mind away. Certain desires, certain fantasies. So even when you say your meditation doesn't go well and you're not particularly peaceful, you're distracted or you're sleepy or you're irritated, by getting to know that and see that through a period of practice, then you get a better understanding of what you have to do in your practice. And then you can maybe devise strategies, certain practices that will be useful for you. So if you're easily irritated with other people and how your body is, and then you may decide to develop more metta meditation, goodwill, compassion. If you have particular desires that keep bothering you, like sexual desire or desire for food, or you like to just lie in bed sleeping, in particular desires you see while you're on retreat, then you can devise and take on practices because you know where your weaknesses lie. And develop the contemplation of the body, the contemplation of impermanence, for example. You have to remember that dukkha is our teacher. Our habit as human beings is we like to run away from dukkha. We don't want dukkha, so we try and get away from it. And that's one reason why we love to go to distraction. do something else rather than be with our own state of mind and how our body feels in the present. When it's unpleasant, we don't like to be there. So we look for something to take our mind away. But in meditation retreats, you're facing up to that. You're looking and learning from dukkha. And you get a certain strength of mind from that. And you can use that again in the future. You've been there, you've done that. You know what it's like to be sitting with some pain or some tiredness or feeling sleepy. You know what it's like to go without certain comforts when you're on retreat. So that becomes a strength of mind that you can use again and again. And hopefully you get a bit more confident in your practice because you've done it before, then you can do it again and it gets easier. Many people, their first retreat, they're struggling just with the thought, they want to leave, run away, go home, do something else. But if you manage to complete from start to finish a retreat, say this is a 3 days retreat, you've completed the 3 days, then you know you can do it. And in the future, you can always rely on that knowledge to help you. And say, well, I've done a 3-day retreat, I can do it again. And if you've done 3 days, well, then you can do 5 days or 7 days or 10 days. It will get easier because you've got the knowledge from the past that you've completed a 3-day retreat. That's particularly important on this kind of retreat, an online retreat, where maybe, although some of you are being together in groups, some of you are on your own at home. And that's probably the hardest of all, to be able to meditate on your own at home. So that's something to give yourself a pat on the back. If you manage to complete every meditation sit, every Dhamma talk, every chanting session, if you manage to complete them on your own, that's a sign of how disciplined you are. And that kind of commitment, you can build on that. If you failed, you sneaked away because nobody knows whether you're in front of your screen or not, whether you're there or not. If there were times when you sneaked away to do other things, okay, well, you learn from that as well. You learn where your weaknesses are. Maybe next time you determine, I'm not going to sneak away. I'll be there for every session. If you really want to learn and build up your strength in the practice, this is the way you have to do it. You have to make determinations. You have to follow the teacher, follow the routine. If you see other people doing it, then you can get some strength from that. And sometimes you have to really be very strong with yourself, because our kilesas are stubborn. Sometimes we want to be lazy. We want to do more things that bring us more pleasure but don't bring us much mindfulness or wisdom. We want to do those things. And sometimes we just have to learn to say no for the higher good. And we get strength by dedicating our practice to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, to our teachers like Ajahn Chah, to our parents. This is the time of New Year, Thai New Year, Sri Lankan New Year. You can dedicate your practice these 3 days, or during a retreat, you dedicate your practice to parents, teachers, friends. Maybe there's someone you know who's sick, and you can dedicate this effort you put into the practice for someone else who's sick and needs your support. Sometimes in the beginning we need that. We need to dedicate our practice to somebody to get up the strength and the commitment to complete a retreat, for example. We're so self-denigrating. Often we say, oh, if it's just for me, I don't need it. If it's just for ourselves, we're not willing to push ourselves. But if it's for someone else, then we will. And that's all right in the beginning. You have to do what you can and use whatever skillful means you can. So sometimes it's easier to dedicate your retreat to someone who's helped you or somebody who's in need. Then you get the strength to really meditate, really put your heart into it. Maybe you get to a point in your practice where you're just doing it for Nibbana. Nibbana paccaya hotam. You know Nibbana, the end of suffering, is good for you, good for others. So you're willing to commit and practice for that end. You know it's the correct thing for us to do in the practice. It's the highest happiness. It's a true goal for anyone following the Buddha. So you're not doing it even for a person, you're just doing it for Nibbana, for purifying your mind of greed, anger, and delusion, for letting go, because it's good for you, it's good for others. So maybe I'll we'll leave the retreat with these few words of encouragement, and then before we finally finish, I think there'll be asking forgiveness, taking the precepts, and then we'll dedicate the merits of the retreat. So we can do that.
Dhamayang Varakataya Sadhu Karang Tatamase Sadhu 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 Anumo